I'm Osian Andrew, a BFI Film Academy Young Programmer, and I'm super excited to be hosting an interview for BFI Flare, the London LGBTQIA+ Film Festival, one of the world's most significant and long-standing queer film festivals in the LGBTQIA+ calendar. I'm thrilled to be talking with a filmmaker who's made a positive, heartfelt film on the theme of identity through drag. I'll be talking to filmmaker Ramon Te Wake about her film Wait, Wait Now, which is part of the Generation Now Shorts programme. The programme has two queer short films that represent young people and stories that are relevant to our lives. Ramon has had a varied career as a performer and filmmaker, and was even a presenter on the first Maori LGBTQIA plus TV show, Takatapui. The film will be available to watch on the BFI Player UK-wide from the 19th until the 30th of March. And there's plenty to talk about, so let me introduce you to our guest. Welcome, Ramon.
Kia ora. Thank you for having me. You did great, by the way. That was wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a long introduction, isn't it? Thank you for
That was
waiting
great.
for all of that. All right
I
then.
was fixed.
Well, I've got a whole bit at the end as well for you to look forward to, and
Mm,
plenty of questions. So here's the
great.
first one. Could you first start off by telling us a little bit about your short film? Wait, wait now. What happened?
Sure. Wait now. So I started writing it back in about 2008 or nine, I think, which feels like a gazillion years ago. Um, and like lots of things during that time, I wrote a bunch of stuff and I just kind of got on with life and then left it. And then when I started making my transition into the drama world, because I come from factual, be making documentaries and factual series for a large portion of my 20 years career, um, I started to realize I had a whole bunch of stories that I'd kind of put on the back burner. And one of them was Wait, Wait Now. So last year, when Ngā Aho Whakaari, which is a an incredible Māori fund kind of creative hub that helps and supports Māori practitioners, um, put out a submission for short films. Myself and Nicola, who's the producer and one of my longtime collaborators and dear friends, we put forward. She said, "What about Wait, Wait Now?" Because we've been meaning to make it for years, just hadn't been the right time. So we did. We got a little bit of funding, and we raised a little bit more funding, and we made the film. And it's really just about two young Takatapui boys. Takatapui is like the Māori word for LGBTIQ plus here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. It's a really inclusive term. Who are young, discovering who they are and find their joy in this kind of world where they perform and do drag and play dress ups in their mum's clothing. Obviously, no one else knows about this gorgeous secret world they have. And in the film, it's kind of just a typical time that this happens where they play dress ups and they do shows. And it's hilarious and engaging, and they know exactly what they want and they know exactly what they do. But this time the parents come home and snap them. And I guess the audience, from what I've discovered, freak out a bit thinking, oh no, what's going to happen? But the parents come home and they come with nothing but openness and they embrace what the kids are doing. And that's kind of how it ends. And I think that part about it of friendship and freedom is really strong, but also about acceptance, I think is really key to the story as well.
Absolutely. And I think the film has empathy at its core and
Yeah.
truly emotional moments. So, how did you handle writing those emotional moments in the script without romanticizing the friendship of the two characters?
Well, I mean, people always say write what you know.
Hmm.
And for me, I'm a trans woman. I have lived experience in my transness, and I also have friendships that I've had since I was five, and they're still in my life now, and I'm nearly knocking on 50. So I think I've had a long time experience of kind of fine-tuning relationships. I have a very good relationship with my parents, but that, like much like, the material I make is always a work in progress because, if you've got to fight for things in your life, and unfortunately for us as queer people, we spend a lot of our time fighting. to be seen, to be heard, to be accepted, to be validated personally, societally, as a community. And so, families are no different. And I think you either have chosen family or blood family, and both of them are just as beautiful and valid. And so I've kind of been in this world and know what it all feels like and means to fight for those sorts of things. And although Wait Now is like a quiet version of fighting, and like you said, there's lots of empathy. We still look at what chosen family looks like through the friendship. Um, and we still look at the complications of families. Like that could have gone so wrong for the boys, and lots of families, lots of young queer kids who get caught kind of doing things like that, get into trouble and face all kinds of harassment or bullying or violence. And I realized as a filmmaker and somebody who makes things that that's not where we are at, I think, in this time in the world. I mean, there's so much stuff going on around us. We don't need to buy into the noise and the chaos, and the trauma porn that sometimes surrounds us as people. And so I think it was important for me to kind of create a story that was filled with empathy and had a sense of hope. And once I knew that, that was my North Star. I just kind of created the story around that. And also when I did pull it out 10 years later, I did fine tune it. Like, I thought it was stuck somewhere. Um, Probably didn't quite have the same thinking that I had now in my life. And so I really needed to kind of rework that. But that part was really exciting, and to really finally give it what it really needed, which was empathy and love. Yeah.
Do you think that came as you grew? Because, you wrote
Mhm.
this almost 20 years ago. Do you think there's a reason it took so long for you to kind of make that film?
Hell yeah. And I think that's the beautiful thing about film. Like, I love talking about the fact that I wrote it, you know, a gazillion years ago. And I also wrote my first screenplay a gazillion years ago around the same time. And I pulled that out again as well. And I'm working on that now. And it's so like thinking, God, I have grown so much. Did I say that? God, how dumb. But, that's the beautiful thing about looking at art from ages ago and pulling it out, and you have all this lived experience, and hopefully you kind of grow yourself and get to a place in your life where you're just like, well, what do I need to say, and who am I, and what's going to be important for me to get across as a storyteller. And that's the beauty of being a storyteller, some years later, having something you wrote a decade or two earlier.
All right, then. Well, how about we talk a little bit more about the craft of the film? Time is short and limited in a short film. How do you manage to write a story that's so in depth, with such in depth characters, with so much meaning? How do you manage to make it so concise and not just end up writing a 100-page script?
Oh, I don't really know the answer to that question. I mean, stories, whether they're 5 minutes, 15 minutes, or 100 minutes. I mean, uh, I mean, I guess fundamentally, you've got to have the journey, and you've got to have a middle, beginning, and an end. And I know they sound really rudimental and fundamental, but um, that's kind of it. And a good story, whether it is 5 minutes or 50 minutes or 100 minutes, you really need to kind of make sure you get all those gorgeous points across. But I think for me, what helped was I knew it was one night, and I knew that the boys would come home from school, and I knew that they'd kind of be living their home life, which is boring things like making sure they're cooking the potatoes and, doing homework and watching a bit of tally while the parents go out. And then I knew once they went out, there was going to be the big kind of like, this is what we do, and it's military, and we take it very seriously. And we've been doing this for 3 years now. And so make sure you've got the right costumes, and they know exactly what they're doing. And there's so much fun and just seeing their kind of connection and bouncing off each other. For young boys who love their artistry and their expression as much as they love their freedom, was super exciting to play with. And then, of course, the ending, which is, the climax of the shows. them performing in their fantastical world, and the parents coming home. I mean, it kind of felt like a gift, to be fair. I knew that I could tell it in a short amount of time. It was perfect for a short film. Interestingly enough, I have been approached to see if I could uh, bring the world bigger and make it into a series. Um, so
Do tell.
that's yeah, I know. I mean, there's nothing yet to be fair, but I've just been having conversations with some people about the idea of expanding the world. And I think well, you've seen it, and you see at the top there's a couple of characters, additional characters, Mr. Patel, the shopkeeper, and the two boys. And one of them that I've written in another script had been to the shows, had done shows in the balaclava. And one of the girls playing elastics, yeah. So it's about just building that world. And so I thought, well, this is great. If people really can resonate with this world that I've already created and imagine it to be bigger, that means that, there is a natural sense of evolution and there is a real buy-in from audiences thinking, okay, I like this world and I'm just had a taste of it. What more we do with it? And so that part's been exciting as well.
I have to ask as well, only because you told
Mm,
me in our last conversation. Please tell us a bit about, I mean, I get a sense it's a little bit biographical almost, this film. I think there are
yeah.
moments in it. Did you used to, with a friend by any chance,
Yeah.
do that whole military exercise?
Mhm. I was the torturous one though. Yeah, I was so torturous. I was the one that was always like, let's do this, make sure this is happening. And Raphael was Sam. Raphael was my girlfriend, who the story is based on. And we were young queer kids. We had no idea what trans was. I mean, we knew that we were girls. And we'd started doing shows since we met like 11, and we carried that right through our teenage into our 20s. Then when we lived apart, would see each other and we'd go, should we do shows in our 30s? And it's something that we've kept together forever. And then yeah, when we were teenagers, other friends would join and we'd go, we do shows, and they would join in. And it's just basically a bottle of wine and going, oh, I've got a show. And then they would do Whitney Houston in the lounge. And it kind of just shifted and moved with the times. But yeah, we started off doing shows when we were young kids, the same thing like I describe in the short film, either my house or her house, either my mum's clothes or her mum's, mostly at my house for some strange reason. Don't know why. I'm not entirely sure that my mum had the best kind of fashion, but maybe, I don't know, there was something more comfortable at my house. So we quite often did it there. And yeah, I was annoying. I'm definitely Alex. I was the annoying one who just needed critiques. And she was always very like 13 out of 15, and that was it. And I was like, I need more. So yeah, it's pretty close to the real thing, embarrassingly. So
Oh, that's wonderful. And, the film is all about this safe space, this little beautiful world that the
yeah,
characters can live in. How important do you think that is for young people, especially young queer people, to find their identity?
I mean, it's hugely important, and it's not easy. And I think when you find friendships and people who love and support and see you and uplift you, they're the ones you want to have in your life, and they're the ones that you look for, and they're the ones that you will remain close to and learn to build your resilience with and from. So yeah, it's crucial. And I don't know how it happens to all of us individuals, but and our stories are so different. I mean, we all don't come from the same stories. I mean, when I was working on Takatapu 20 years ago, we used to tell some big stories, and some of the stories was how many girls, trans women, would be kicked out of homes at 10, 11, 12 and end up on the streets, and they were real stories. And I think partly for me, families and the complexities of families and the yearning for acceptance, and whether it's from blood or from chosen, to me is such a fascinating world. And you get a glimpse of it in Wait, Wait Now, but I tell it in other types of other areas and stories that I'm working on and have worked on. And and just the power of it and the importance of it and how it impacts your sense of self and belonging and empowerment. And so, when you're young, those are the things that you really need to start building who you are. And so, all I can say, without really trying to sound like I'm giving advice, but is like, you've got to find your people and just realize that it will be tough at times for a start, especially if you're somewhere where there's no one like you, or where you don't have a lot of support. But never give up. And I think that's the thing. Just try to figure out a way to channel your pain into something. It's art's not for everyone, but expression in art does help channel it and figure out how you can burn off some of that pain and fear. But yeah, definitely find your people. And when you do have your people, you can start to really um, figure out your sense of self. And that's the journey that you'll go on for the rest of your life. Yeah, important.
I don't even want to ask any more questions. I just want you to just talk and talk and talk. That is such wonderful advice. No, seriously, that was beautiful to listen to. Thank you so much. But on the back of that, these characters, they're so genuine and they are wonderfully performed. Let's talk about those actors. Let's talk about what that casting process was like. And how did you go on to work with those actors then that you eventually chose to be in your film?
I think the casting process was most interesting because you have to understand the story was set in the early 90s, which is when we started doing and the shows. And we wanted it to be authentic. I mean, from all stretches, from all the lays of the land, not just, because we did contemplate making it modern because then we didn't have the money. So we thought art department would be it'd be much more efficient or whatever. So we did think about all those sorts of things. And I was like, no, it has to be in the 90s. And I think we really kind of created a landscape or an environment that was really especially 90s. And that was really exciting. But with the boys, we were looking for two essentially young Takatapu boys. We weren't looking for trans people. We weren't looking for, and that's the interesting thing about the world we're in. Our identities have grown so much. Um, and, you know, we come in so many different ways, which is beautiful. And we're trans and queer and fluid and non-binary. And in the audition, we had so many queer, non-binary, trans people come through the doors, but we were looking for like a special thing. And interestingly enough, we had mostly trans people, mostly kind of non-binary people. We had lots of, wahine and it's hard because you were like shivers. I want to be open, and I am open to potential and possibility and identity, but also we were looking for something specific. Like back in the day, we didn't know what trans was. Um, that's something we learned as we got older. And also, we didn't have this internet. So it wasn't, accessible. And when we were being called names, we were called two names, like, and which was horrible names. And so there was a simpler use of language back in the day. And so that's kind of what we were looking for. And it took a bit to find our two boys. But when we did, we were super excited. But it just goes to show the beauty of how things have evolved, identity and language and stuff. And it was exciting to see all the people come through the door, especially all the young people come through the door who were just so great in their skin. And yeah, it was so beautiful to watch. But we were looking for two special boys and we found them with Taniko and Brock. And yeah, but we didn't have a lot of time with them. So we kind of had to make sure that they were ready to go. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about grassroots filmmaking in so many ways. It's when you don't have a lot of resource. It's just like, boom, get in there. Let's go, let's go, let's go. I didn't have a ton of time to build their connection as much as I would have liked, but hopefully we were able to kind of make it seem like we had a ton of time. Yeah, which we didn't.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it really comes across as well. I really do think it comes
Oh,
across
good.
in the film. It's so genuine, it's so real. But I feel like I have not properly congratulated you. You are part of the BFI Flare Festival, and
I
you've
know.
come
Crazy.
into the UK for the first time. Am I right?
Yeah, I know. It sounds like I should have been to the UK heaps of times, but I haven't. So this is my first time. I'm so excited to be part of the festival, and to do this for the Academy. And I love young filmmakers. It's funny when you get older, lots of people ask, you start kind of having projects where people go, "Oh, I'd love you to be a mentor for this young person," or yeah, so I kind of get offered. It's funny. I have half the year where I work and then half the year where I kind of get offered to do mentorship stuff or to talk to young people about stuff. And I'm sort of thinking, oh, this is what happens when you get older. People think you've had a little bit of lived experience as a filmmaker. Now they're like, share it with all the kids. And so that part's super exciting. So yeah, so to do this for the Academy feels really right. And then I'm part of Five Films for Freedom, which is like, yeah, pretty special.
That is wonderful. What are some of
Yeah.
the things you're hoping to experience at BFI Flare Fest when you come over? What were you hoping to see? What are your super massive expectations that you've got?
I mean, I just want to really be able to build community. And, this is a really wonderful opportunity to kind of create and build a global connection. Um, And, I mean, I made a TV series last year, or just a little bit of business. I made a TV show last year, and we made a documentary that just won first prize in Tahiti a few weeks back called Trans and Pregnant. And I made a comedy series last year. And so we'd like to kind of look at try to selling those things over in the UK as well. So, there's a bit of business chucked in. There's a bit of building community, like meeting you and Ruben and some of the other people that I spoke to on Zoom. I'm excited to see. And I've got some friends in London that I, would love to see and catch up with. But to be fair, when I was in Tahiti 2 weeks ago for the FIFO Film Festival, you're on the ground and you're in the festival and you start building all these kind of connections. And by the time I left FIFO, I made some really beautiful friendships, um, that of other filmmakers and festival makers, and you just kind of those are the things that you walk away thinking, well, that was cool. And I'd love to see a ton of films as well. I'm kind of the person that would just like to arrive and see. I haven't studied up too much. I don't know if that's good or bad. But yeah, I'm kind of excited to kind of jump into it and build and see what can happen.
Oh, absolutely. Well, if you're looking for friendships and connections, you've got a friend in the BFI, I'm telling you. And
Yeah.
there's so many wonderful people working in the BFI. And I think you're going to make some great connections when you come over. And yeah, hopefully I'll be able
Cool.
to see you as well. It's going to be fantastic. Now, you just mentioned a TV show that you made last year. I'm
Yeah.
guessing that might have been The Boy, the Queen, and everything in between.
Yeah, and I was supposed to send you a link. I'm so sorry. How terrible of me.
Yeah, you know what? I did actually. It is online somewhere, I think. I've not watched it yet because honestly, it's on my to-do list. It's on my to-do list, and I can't wait to watch it. But first, you said,
Yeah.
you want to come to Flare, and it's a bit of a business trip as well as a
Hmm.
bit of fun. Sell the TV show to us right now. What can we expect from that?
Oh, so the series. Yeah, it's about Jacob 25 who's released from prison, kind of rough and tumble kind of guy. And he's got to get a job and keep it within 14 days. Got to get a job within 14 days, but keep it. And he wants to get back on the straight and narrow. And he tries to. And so the first episode sets it up. He's got a baby mama and he's got a 7-year-old kid called Kai, and they're not together anymore, but he kind of stays with her. She feels sorry for him in a way. Anyway, he gets a job, but his past comes up and, you know, tackles him, and he's left thinking, shit, I don't have a job and I will go back to jail. And he's forced to go and see his father, who lives on K Road and works in a club. And his father just happens to be the most famous drag queen in the country. So off he goes. And asks his estranged father for a job. And of course, she's pissed at him for just everything. And and she hires him. And it's great because she keeps him under his thumb and they just knock heads for two, three, 4 episodes. And then, he falls for the trans ingenue who's there and and they just try to rebuild their friendship. And Max, who's the famous drag queen, her best friend, gets sick and then they deal with that. And yeah, it's a really beautiful story of families. And that's that thing that I was trying to explain before. I think I'm just obsessed with the complexities of families. And although this is not necessarily based on my father and my brother, there were elements of the kind of combativeness that I think a lot of us can relate to. And, and just the idea of forgiveness and healing, beyond your trauma. And I think once again, I think I will just kind of continue to tell these kinds of stories that show not only queer and trans people in a different way, because I really want us to, like with our trans character, Hope, she just is trans. We never set her up. We don't bang on about her transness. Her father, who's a construction worker, loves Hope for who she is and has let her just be herself. And they have a beautiful relationship. And I know trans women and their fathers don't often have gorgeous relationships. So I really wanted to show that it's possible and that things like this is possible in our community. So just things like that were really present for me, like not really banging on about our trauma or banging on about things that don't work in our lives, but trying to communicate things that can work and have worked and are positive reinforcements of what families might look like. So yeah, so in that sense, that series, I think, hit the mark. And hopefully, I can even sell it in London. That would be good in the UK.
That would be amazing. If Forgive me for asking, is it a Maori language TV show?
No, it's English. It's
Oh,
English, yeah.
okay, because you have worked in the Maori language loads, haven't you? And I'm a Welsh speaker as well, and I
Yeah.
think minority language film I feel like it's having a bit of an uprising at the minute. I think you're seeing more and more minority language films kind of coming up and getting into big award ceremonies. How important do you think it is for more minority language films to be made at kind of a grassroots level? And do you have any advice for those filmmakers that are maybe wanting to make something in their native language when there's not much content out there?
Yeah, I think Indigenous filmmaking is huge and is growing across television and film, which is super exciting. Um, and but also so is queer storytelling is rising more so and correcting and telling real kind of authentic narratives more so now than we ever have been. So I think there's a correlation between that. I think that we're really lucky to live in a time where Indigenous storytelling and queer storytelling simultaneously are increasing and having a really gorgeous moment. Um, I'm Maori and I'm queer, so it's exciting for me to be able to kind of be out in the world and share that with everyone. But I think if you are into if Indigenous storytelling is your vibe, I say hit it. And it's so empowering. And New Zealand, we're very progressive in some ways here in our country. And one of them has been language. And I think for Maori television, which is our Indigenous television channel, unveiled in 2004. So that's 20 years ago, 21 years ago. And that's a sign that it was just purely Maori and it was 30% or it was full Maori. And so people who are learning the language could have space there, and people who are fully into the language could have space there. And you weren't judged whether you spoke conversational Māori, and for a lot of the programs that I've worked on, even when I was presenting in Takatapui, we had a te reo person there, a tikanga person there that would help us, say the words and learn the words. And I mean, I didn't grow up knowing my Māori tanga. So I was learning as I was going. And sometimes that's the best way to do it because it really arms you authentic, like in a real natural way, where you're not like, it's that thing of, and I was never taught to be a filmmaker. I learned to be a filmmaker, and I'm not suggesting for one that, you should street smarts is better than the traditional route of learning. But for my own experience, I was learning my Māori tanga and my indigeneity as I was working through it, much like my filmmaking. And I think I've kind of come to a place where if I wanted to make a series or a TV show or a documentary that had Māori in it, and I've contemplated it, even with Māori television, we were looking at season 2 for The Boy, the Queen, and we were going to go with Māori Whakaata Māori now, sorry. And, we had to utilize 30% of te reo into the show. It didn't work out that what we were trying to do, but, I thought that would be really, really exciting. And so, it's a wonderful time for Indigenous filmmakers, I think, and queer filmmakers. And just if that's what you want to do, really dig into it because it's a special time.
Wonderful. Well, I've got one question that we ask every filmmaker that we interview.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to filmmakers looking at getting started in the industry today?
I think you have to have a really strong sense of yourself and the sense of what you want to say. You have to have something to say. And then I think you have to really be courageous enough to dive into the things you want to talk about and you want to communicate and you want to say. Um, I don't think just having lived experience, in my case, I make some queer content, quite a bit of queer content, but I'm also, I grew up in a world where I had access to both the traditional world, I guess you could call it, and the queer realm. And I've never ever taken that for granted because, I think both of those things and learning about and being aware of the world around me, but also my queer world has really armed me with a lot of things, with a lot of places to go in my storytelling. So it's not all about lived experience, but I think as a storyteller, you must kind of be really open, um, and really be willing to kind of go deep and not be afraid of the things you might want to talk about or communicate or say. And then I think you also want to be able to kind of really push yourself, um, because film is wonderful when it's really clean and straightforward. And film is also really exceptional when you get to kind of live your wildest fantasies and your dreams. And as wacky and esoteric and layered as they are, I go there because we need more filmmakers like that who are willing to just push the boundaries. And when you find a gorgeous balance, even better. And, when you have a really natural storytelling frame, bone, that's really exciting too, because that means you can kind of genre hop. Um, yeah, so don't be afraid, be willing to go deep, um, be certain about the kinds of stories you want to tell, research if you need to, jump into it, live it, breathe it, write it, be willing to fuck up a ton. It won't always get it. Took me 10, 12, something odd years to take my stories and bring them into a fresh new world mindset. But there's joys of having things sit on the back burner for ages and pulling them out again. So it doesn't always happen off this straight away. Some do, and that's great. Yeah, and just be kind to yourself, but always push yourself.
I honestly cannot think of a better way to end our conversation. As much as I would like it to go on for hours and hours and hours, I guess we'll just have to continue it when you come to London for Flare.
Yeah, let's do that.
And I can't wait, honestly. That brings us to the end of our scene, everyone. Thank you for joining us, Ramon. Please be sure to watch Wait, Wait Now as part of the Generation Now Shorts program. Again, the film will be available to watch on the BFI Player UK-wide from the 19th until the 30th of March. Thanks, Ramon. Thank you so much. I hope
Thank
you've enjoyed.
you.
Thank you so much. Now, in the next season of Scenes, we will be looking at interviewing the award winners of the BFI Future Film Festival, which has just happened. So check the BFI YouTube soon. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Ramon.
Thank you.